My main reaction to this now is it's really sad because Trent Alexander-Arnold is a lovely guy. He's a really nice guy. He has been an incredible player for Liverpool. I went to see him doing work for a charity called An Hour for Others, who get people to donate their time for an hour a week to help people in need. It wasn't through the club. He wasn't doing it because he had to do it. He was doing it because he'd always done it.
Oh, we can't have this, Rory. We can't have him be a nice guy. We've got to stop. That's why.
This is who you're booing. This is who you are booing.
Stamp this out. We can't allow goodness. We back. Like Barcelona in front of it, cheering Travis Scott. What a weekend. Liverpool let Arsenal feel like they drew the battle but lost the war. With Trent Alexander learning you either die a hero or you live long enough to become a Madridista villain. Newcastle treated Chelsea like Nico Jackson treated Botman's face. Nottingham Forest and Villa make the race for fifth, the place to be at the end of this season. And Manchester City revert back to lull setting, dropping points against the worst team in this Premier League. And we are living in days that feel ripped from the Book of Revelations, describing the harbinger of an oncoming apocalypse. Manchester United and Tottenham Hotspur, currently 16th and 17th. One of them will end the season with more trophies than the Arsenal. And to pick it all apart, I'm not here alone. We got the Terry's Chocolate Orange in human form, the Crown Prince of Harrogate from The Observer. It's my mate, it's Mr. Rory Smith.
Boo.
What was that, Ro?
Just practising.
You are just practising. That's all we've got left, isn't it? Just laughing at the pain of others.
I think that there's so little to play for. This is not a great advert for why people should listen to a podcast. There's so little to play for in the rest of the season that we're having to make our own entertainment. Booing heroic figures who were just days ago, weeks ago, adored and loved. Just boo them now. Just boo them. Forget about them. Pretend you never fancied them in the first place. Yeah,
I mean, the fascinating thing, we will get to that, is I'd never really watched football. I've realised this last couple of weeks. Football is a remarkable athletic competition, but being an Everton supporter, the competition thing is actually a diminished value. I watch football for the subtext, the humanity that it reflects, and the honest truth is this weekend was so full of all of it. And we are in this phase, Raw, where we do separate the winners from the losers at the end of the season. And I wanted to raise this with you to try and get your understanding. This last couple of weeks is almost just 100% filled with the diabolical delight we take in other people's suffering. Arsenal's demise in the Champions League, Tottenham's perpetual agony, Manchester United's plummet into, I don't like to be hyperbolic, but the heart of darkness. Watching it from over here, Raw, here's what I wanted to ask you. Why do British people love hating on other people, taking a deep delight on other people? If it was an Olympic sport, schadenfreude. First of all, they have to use a German word to try and throw us off the scent. They don't have an English word for it, but they're so bloody good. They would sweep the podium, Great Britain. Why? Martin Amis quote that the British feel schadenfreude even about themselves. Why do they love it so bloody much?
I think it's the full quote, not that Britain's the only country that feels schadenfreude about itself. I think that is absolutely true, that there is just a glee that we take in seeing things go wrong. And I think in a way, it's quite a positive trait, because you kind of, in certain circumstances, you kind of think, well, actually, the ability to laugh at yourself, to find some sort of macabre pleasure in your own shortcomings, that's quite a good thing in life to have. But what's less positive is when it's applied to literally everybody else on the planet, and you just sort of cackle in glee whenever they pull up short. And I think it's especially pronounced in football in general, and especially pronounced in football now, in this precise month-long window, because nobody's got anything to play for. There's a handful of teams chasing the Champions League, but apart from that, relegation's done, title's done, the EFL is finished apart from the playoffs. There's the number of teams who have an active interest in the season now is really, really small. So what are you going to do? Sit in the sunshine and clap? No. You're going to sit in the sunshine and laugh at people who are losing.
You're going to point at them. You're going to point at them, and then you're going to go, ha ha, ha ha. You can hear it from across the Atlantic, just a nation of Nelson Muntses. I look at Arsenal. Honestly, I look at them and I'm like, my God, we'll talk about them. Just straining with endeavour. Thinking every thought, suffering every indignity. To come second, which is not bad. It's not bad. I know hope and shattered hope are inextricable. Failed aspiration, it must be punished. In our black and white reality, Raw, it has to be called a bottle job. You either win or you're a bottle. Like if Sisyphus happened today, Raw. If Sisyphus was pushing that rock up the mountain, and then the second, for the millionth time, it rolled out of his hands, over his toes, right back to the base. We just pointed and be like, bottler. To Job, Mooner in the book of Job, perpetually. What a Mooner, what an arsehole, look at him. I mean, that's where, there's that line in Pride and Prejudice, the most English novel that ever English. I think it's Mr. Bennet, my bloody namesake. For what do we live but to make sport for our neighbours and laugh at them in our turn? Is this what we're now reduced to? And you're right, it is. Football is the perfect device for this.
But I think it's partly powerlessness, isn't it? That within that football context, that because you have no agency over it, because all these things can happen that might make people who you are exposed to happy, when they fall short, your natural inclination is to really rub salt into that wound. I don't think it has always been as bad as it is now. And my long-standing theory, Rog, it's early for a theory in an episode, but
bring it up. I love a Rory theory.
When we were younger, and for some of us that was more recent than for others, like your team lost, and you had to go into school or into work or into college or whatever on the Monday morning, and you might face a bit of ribbing from your classmates or your colleagues or whatever. And then by Tuesday, maybe a couple of jokes here or there, but by Wednesday everybody had forgotten. They kind of moved on with their lives, or you were looking forward to a game in Europe, or you're looking forward to the game at the weekend. You could believe that the disappointment was behind you. Whereas now, because we live so much of it in this permanent kind of 24/7 state, that friction, which has always existed, is just constant. You are constantly rubbing up against other people, seeing their aspirations, their ambitions, their hopes and their dreams, but also their delusions.
How dare they? Oh, those, yes, big on them.
Yeah, like their versions of reality that contradict and contraindicate yours. And so there is a point at which that has become the way. It's become so pronounced that we are living all in this giant bar. That's what everyone says. Oh, you wouldn't say that to somebody in the pub. But we're all in the pub all of the time, effectively. And everyone is off their face. Everyone is hammered, saying whatever they want, constantly, right in your face. It's like, it's not even in your face. They're sidling up to you in the urinals, just whispering in your ear. Your team's rubbish, mine's better than yours. And everyone's just in a really bad mood the whole time. So that is, I think it's become... It's a thing that has always existed a bit. I think football is really, really kind of prone to it. It is quite English. I don't think the Spanish and the Italians, in most walks of life, I don't think they think like this. I don't think the French have got time for it. They're all too busy having really long lunches. It's a very British thing. It's a cold, small island. There's not much to do in the winter. Laugh at your neighbours. Why not? It's entertainment. But I think the fact that we're all in each other's pockets all of the time as fans, God, that is what's made it so pronounced.
We're all just drunk at the urinal, is what you're telling me.
We're all just drunk at the urinal. Everyone in football is drunk at the urinal.
Everyone's looking for a live truth. I think, Rural, you've just reduced it and revealed it. I mean, it is amazing, though. It's almost as if football has become like schadenfreude's global megaphone. It is. It's the perfect delivery mechanism for that ultimate British high, schadenfreude. See the rise of Arsenal Fan TV in like the mid-2000s. Mark Goldbridge in the Here and Now, both showcasing really remarkably performative despair.
The mere mention of Mark Goldbridge, one of my great heroes, Rog, makes me think that this isn't a purely British thing. I think it's global. I wonder if there's a deeper truth that there's a lot of things that Britain has to be held responsible for, don't get me wrong, but maybe this isn't one of them. Because what all of those YouTube accounts, what all those Twitch accounts, all those streamers find is that when they perform agony in defeat, millions of people hate watch. There's millions of people out there, and they can't all be British, who want to see fans of other clubs suffering. That's what they're really in it for. Do you know what it is? It is the manifestation, and you'll have seen this a million times at Goodison. You'll have seen it a million times around any stadium in the world, and it's always fascinated me. A goal goes in at a football match. The vast majority of the crowd goes up. They celebrate. Their arms are in the air. They're cheering. They're hugging their friends. They're sometimes pumping their fists.
You're talking about something that I would have seen at Goodison. I don't even know what you're talking about.
This is the opposition scoring.
Yeah, okay.
This is the opposition scoring at Goodison.
No one comes up.
They're celebrating. They're pumping their fists. They're embracing their friends. But there's always a handful. Who turn to the other fans. That's their first instinct, is to turn to the other fans and go, ah!
Yeah.
That is who we all are now. We are all
We're all just at the urinal giving the wanker sign.
Yeah,
This is, I mean,
which actually is a dangerous sign to give at a urinal.
It is amazing. I do think. I mean, I wrote about this in my book that, like, growing up in England in the 80s, a place of despair. It always shook me that the American soap operas, Dynasty, Dallas, were about, rich people, aspiration, where the problems were about having too many oil wells, too many mink coats, too many affairs to fit into one day.
It's logistically nightmare.
Yeah, it is a nightmare. Yeah. Right, tell me about it. But the English soap operas, Coronation Street, the classic poverty in Manchester, EastEnders, just working class life in London at the time, Brookside, working class life in Liverpool. The offer there was like, you think your life's crap? Watch these people suffer and then shut the hell up because they're really suffering. I mean, there is something that is incredibly British about the impulse to take pleasure in other people's suffering because it does feel good. And football gives you that instant cosmic justice for having belief, making the mistake to believe that you can do it, Arsenal fans. Laughing at other people's betrayal by hope. That human mechanism, watching troops in the olden days be miserable. I think there's something that makes you feel good about yourself. I don't love it. Ultimately, because what it does is crush empathy and all that kind of stuff. But that's at the core of it. When you have nothing, watching other people's sadness is the ultimate freebie to make you feel alive.
And the other thing is, and there's a risk of over-intellectualising this, but most fans have nothing to celebrate. Most seasons. You might win games and stuff, you'll score goals, you might beat your rivals. But by the business end, you've not won a title. You've not kind of achieved promotion or won a cup. I don't know whether I should name him, a former colleague of yours and a very good friend of mine, Mark Ogden of ESPN, fine reporter, always had this line that Mark is a very Mancunian man, and his line was always that because as football fans got more emotional, more kind of outwardly emotional, his line was always, well, we are all Liverpool fans now. Like the natural setting of football fandom is to be like Liverpool fans. Everyone is, everything is a massive high or a major low or whatever. I think you can update that. Most teams at the end of the season, Rog, are Everton. There is nothing to play for. You're just going through the motions. There's no real reason for any of it to happen. My son asked me when Liverpool were losing to Chelsea last week. He sort of walked into the room, saw it was like 3-1, and he went, "Oh, Dad, they shouldn't even be playing this. Why do they have to play? They've already won it. Why don't they just not play their games?" And that was his view. Like, what's the point in this? This is meaningless. I think for most fans, this bit of the season, especially this year, is a bit pointless. The only thing that's left is mocking your rivals for their pointlessness.
That's not this analysing the guards of honour, son. That's what you should have said to him. Look at Madueke, so let me rewind the highlights. Anyway, let's get back to the urinal and adopt the position as we're about to give out the wanker sign to everyone. As Pep's friend and Celtics coach Joe Mazzulla put it this weekend, you've got to tap into your darkness. And so let's do that. Let's kick this off with a toast. Want to raise my first Michelob Ultra of the day to a season in which it's been the year of the American owner. I was thinking about this weekend. Mentally, we're still kind of living in the stereotypical days in which Liverpool's previous know-nothing American owners, Hicks and Gillette, descended upon Anfield and in their opening press conference announced that they were so proud to, quote, own the Liverpool Reds, thinking they just bought like the same as the Cincinnati baseball team. But the reality is this: American owners, they've really owned English football this season, won the respective leagues all the way through the top 3 levels of English football. Fenway Sports Group owned Liverpool, took the Premier League. I don't know if you've heard, Raw. Championship winners Leeds United, owned by the investment arm of the San Francisco 49ers. Birmingham City, run by Knighthead Capital, along with chiseled chin investor Tom Brady, finished top of your League One. Not only that, but the second place teams in those 2 leagues also run, you got it, by Americans. All-Star game coming in hot. These are dizzying times we're living in. I mean, global football is truly in its American investment era, for good or for bad. And those days when Americans were just seen as bumbling idiots, saying like, hey, let's have Roma play in the Coliseum for home games, those are way out of date. Our US men's national team, yes, not really able to win so many games right now, but our owners cannot be beat. Raw, this land of ours is now the best in the world at creating winning football owners and popes. This is who we are now.
Yeah, top popes coming out of America at the
White
moment.
Sox
Just world-class popes, left, right and centre. I think there has been a real sea change in terms of both how good some American owners have become at running sports teams. There was definitely a phase where the initial instinct of the American owner was to believe that because US sports are much more advanced in a commercial sense than European sports, that applied to the way the clubs were run as sporting entities. That has now dissipated, and I think if you look at FSG, if you look at Bill Foley, if you look at what the 49ers have done at Leeds, Knighthead at Birmingham, there are really smart groups doing really smart things coming out of the States, and I think partly that's to do with their expertise that they've built up, but it's also increasingly because of a willingness to listen and to learn and to understand that football, although it is in many ways a really stupid, irrational industry, sometimes within that stupidity and irrationality, there is wisdom, and I think what you're seeing now increasingly is a happy medium of those two things. The one thing I would say, Rog, is we could probably do without the pep talks from the owners, as we saw from the Birmingham guy at Wembley after they lost one of the minor domestic cup finals. I think that's not something we need in our game.
Can we just say, Rob McElhenney came on our show. I think we dropped it on Saturday, the interview, and he revealed one of the team talks he'd given his Wrexham players before the game. Listen to it, Raw, because it is beautiful, and I am not a big fan of any owner going in there, although I will say, for me, Liverpool's greatest owners of all time remain Hicks and Gillette. I hope they buy the club again. They took it to the cusp of bankruptcy. Oh, there you are. There's my schadenfreude. I'm at the urinal. How am I doing? Am I giving the right wanker sign? Let's get to the football, Raw. The actual ramifications, yes, may not have extended between the hot races for 5th and 8th. But to me, as I said, everything lies in the text, the human truth that it reflects in key moments. It is like a religious text, football. And Saturday and Sunday, our cup overflow. So let's dive in. Liverpool 2, Arsenal 2, the top two colliding. Could have been a title decider if your title had not already been decided. Liverpool, your champions. Arsenal, bridesmaids once again. Bridesmaids who are never, ever, ever able to catch that bouquet toss. Their agony, at levels known only to Bill Murray in Groundhog Day. This was God of Honour 2 Electric Boogaloo Raw. That's why we watch football. By the way, knowing Mikel Arteta, this moment would have absolutely been excruciating, but also knowing Mikel Arteta, you can imagine that he probably had his team training on Guard of Honours all week long. I've got to say, Miles Lewis-Skelly, try harder. He won the Rory Smith physically in Guard of Honour but mentally not clapping award of the week, Will.
It was a masterpiece from Lewis-Skelly. Got to admire it. I mean, almost beyond Madueke levels of not clapping.
Yeah, for one so young to fulfil that in what must have been his first pro Guard of Honour was really, it was exquisite impudence, just disregard for, yes, the team that had blindsided us, but no biggie.
But what I really liked, and this is where they both excelled, Madueke and Lewis-Skelly, ahead of Bernardo Silva, in many ways the greatest non-clapper in Guard of Honour history, is that both Maresca and Arteta, and this is testament to their attention to detail, Rog, they positioned them right at the front.
Yes.
They were the first point of contact. I'm not clapping.
Why is that? You can sort of
set the tone.
Big Verge, who came on an interview that will drop, I think, on Wednesday on our YouTube. First question I said to him, Verge, do you like Guard of Honours? And I kind of I didn't know how it would go. He could have been like, no, they're really ridiculous. He just goes, oh yeah, I love them. It was kind of like, hell yeah. But you watch, the shot was Scorsese and Liverpool marching out, the camera in front, and you watch Big Verge clock off to his right, something weird that was going on. Cameras pan out, it's just Miles Lewis-Skelly, head down. There in body, not there in spirit. This show is not about football anymore. This is Today in Guard of Honours. This is what we've become, Raw.
It's all that's left to talk about, that and the booing. Yes. The game itself, I think Johnny Liu wrote in The Guardian that it must be one of the greatest kind of discrepancies between what a game could have been and what it could have meant and what it did actually mean.
For the data guys, that delta. It was more, though. It was a scientific experiment, really, to find out who plays better. A team who've been on the piss for about 2 weeks now, or one who've just had their hearts and their guts ripped out by Paris Saint-Germain in the Champions League semi-final. That's what I was watching. Some little intrigue. Can Arsenal lock up second place, which is really just us saying, oh, please let them fall completely. Ha ha. Declan Rice not playing, and it must have been hard for them to have their Hathaway and hopes crushed, pulverised for another season, 5 seasons without a trophy now. How'd you go again? That first half, you were watching hyper-competitive men, try and compete when there's nothing left to compete for. That first half, they were switched off. Andy Robertson got another assist for old time's sake. Gakpo stole in, headed home, 18th goal of the season for him. 87 seconds later, how we laugh from the kickoff virtually. Liverpool won the ball back, cut Arsenal apart again. Szoboszlai rolled the ball in on goal and Luis Diaz dived in to finish. Were you like, Raw? You shouting out, lads, Arsenal, you can stop your guard of honour now. Thanks, boys.
I was enjoying the Dominic Szoboszlai run. That's been his sort of super weapon this season. It did feel... I was surprised, to be honest. I thought that the guard of honour, especially in light of the heartbreaking elimination by PSG falling short for the season, I actually thought the guard of honour might give Arsenal a real kind of emotional boost. Just surely the humiliation written into the guard of honour for everyone except Miles Lewis-Skelly. The inherent cookiness of having to stand and applaud the champions onto the field. I thought that might give them a little bit of an extra spur, but it seemed to deflate them even further. And that, I've got to admit, that surprised me, how passive Arsenal were in that first half.
Yeah, Liverpool fans are at the urinal screaming, best team in Europe. You're having a laugh. How they did laugh. Credit Arsenal, honestly, for summoning any energy to fight back resiliently. Second half, Liverpool dropped their tempo. Martinelli, fine kiss of a header as Virgil switched off right after the break. And then Mikel Merino, super striker, played on by Trent. We'll talk about him in a second. To stoop to conquer after Alisson's palm away from an Erdegaard Master Blaster went off the post and up the gut. There was the Merino red. Arsenal's league leading 6. So they are top of something. We'll talk about Arsenal in a minute because I think it's really important, big picture. But we have to go back to the 66th minute. Trent Alexander-Arnold came on. As he prepared to, the Anfield faithful started to sing the Stevie Gerrard song. Again, just Shakespeare levels of brilliant. Like, you could have been a legend like Stevie G, but we'll never sing your name like this for years after you leave. Then they booed his first touches after he come on. They sang Conor Bradley's name. We talked quickly about Trent last week because news broke about his defection, really, to Real Madrid. I think we both share a certain sense of empathy, which is not really appreciated by many Liverpool fans who've been in touch, that someone human who'd only known Liverpool, the city and the club, would have wanderlust after winning everything and would want to experience and explore the world around them. That's like a natural human thing. Try new things, crave new experiences. A lot of Reds got in touch to say, no, we don't understand that. Ultimately, I've learned this week, not for the first time, there's the rational and the emotional, and there's a neutral. You can be the former, but the boos, we saw the pure emotional.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot going on with the booing, and we've touched on some of this before, Rog. I think that part of the pain, obviously, is that he's a homegrown kid, he's a Scouser, he is a player for whom I think a lot of the fans treated as like an avatar almost of their dreams, their hopes, and it feels like a betrayal. I think that is a completely legitimate interpretation. I think it also, for a lot of fans, is incredibly sad. And that is an emotion that fans, people in general, maybe, it pours out in weird ways. It manifests in strange ways. And I think a lot of people find it very hard to accept that seeing Trent Alexander-Arnold not play for Liverpool next season will just be quite sad. That will make me sad, and it's okay to be sad about that. I think on a rational level, everybody accepts kind of the logic of it. They maybe feel there's a little bit of disingenuity about the role that money might have played in the potential move to Madrid.
And leaving for free, that's like a salty and the woundy. And
so the leaving for 3 thing, and I don't know, forgive me if I'm kind of rehashing old ground. I think the one bit of context that's maybe missing from a lot of observers, shouldn't use that word, they're my employers. A lot of observers, not the observer.
That's product placement.
A lot of commentators. The bit that they're missing is that there is a strange context around Liverpool whereby, because of the way FSG run the club, which I think is really hard to argue with given everything they've achieved, because of the way FSG run the club, it feels as though Trent is betraying Liverpool twice. Once by leaving, and once by leaving on a free. Now, to me, that misses a fairly key point, which is that Liverpool, had they tried to sell Trent Alexander-Arnold, certainly last summer, and to be honest, probably the summer before, A, there would have been mutiny among the fans, but B, there was no market for him because most teams can't afford Trent Alexander-Arnold. Liverpool wouldn't sell him to another English club. PSG don't need a right back. They've got Achraf Hakimi, who's better than Trent Alexander-Arnold. There's no team in Italy that can afford his wages. I think Bayern Munich would struggle, if I'm completely honest. Maybe, but I think they'd struggle. Barcelona definitely would. And if Liverpool had tried to sell him to Real Madrid last summer, Real Madrid would have said, I think we'll just sit this one out, lads, and wait until his contract expires next year. We've got Dani Carvajal. There was no market for Trent Alexander-Arnold. But, to the fans, it feels like a homegrown player, a Liverpool fan, who should understand their concerns, their quibbles, their annoyances with the way FSG run the club, is not only leaving, but he's leaving for nothing, depriving them of the fee that might buy his replacement. And that, I think, is the thing that's made it particularly noxious.
Yeah, I mean, here's what I've come to realise watching this, Rule. It hurts in life, in family. It hurts in life, friends. It hurts in life, I mean, all the way through, long list. It hurts in life when someone of your own leaves you. Not just leaving the club, but if Liverpool is a religion, and we often ban this about it's more than football, it's a religion. And I do think Liverpool, having grown up there, and living through the knock-on of the Shankly era, where the city had nothing, you can make the case there is many tenets of religion, and many of you listen to this show who are theologians, the believing, the belonging, the behaving, that religions are ultimately prescribed. There is a lot of that in being a Liverpool fan. He's rejecting the faith, Trent, watching this. Religions have their way of handling that, and I think for Jehovah's Witnesses, for the Amish, for Orthodox Judaism, there's an act called shunning, which is used to almost control the conduct of the members. Shunning, it's almost like a form of bullying and rejection, that if the fellow member of the religion starts to wobble, you shun them. You have to protect the collective group. You can't allow individual acts or thinking. It's essentially a social death penalty, Raw. I mean, that's what we saw to some degree on Sunday, where the centrality of the faith, the absolute belief in the collective, the sense of total us or them, you have to protect it or else it will disintegrate. It's black and white. There can be no in between. And that's what it felt like we were watching play out on Sunday in a really profound and quite humanly agonising way.
Yeah, and it's because he's doing something that to all the people who were booing him. And look, I've never booed a Liverpool player. It would never occur to me to boo a Liverpool player. I've seen plenty of players I'd like to have booed. Don't get me wrong. Trent Alexander-Arnold, not one of them. But that's not what fandom is to me, to be perfectly honest. Andy Robertson struck a really clever tone in his interview after the game, where he said that you can't tell him how to feel and he can't tell you how to feel, and everyone is entitled to their own reaction. And I think to an extent that's probably true, and that is the truth of the matter. It's definitely more pronounced because there's nothing else for Liverpool to think about. If Liverpool were still if there was a Champions League final around the corner, Trent wouldn't have put that statement out, and no way would the cop be booing him. But now that it is the kind of central narrative thrust of the last few weeks of Liverpool's season, of Liverpool's story, I think there is genuine dismay over the fact that Trent has done the thing that, to that crowd, to the members of that religion, as you put it, Rog, is unthinkable. He's committed heresy. That's what he's done. He said, I can turn my back on this.
Yeah, look at me. I am leaving you. And that you cannot do that if Liverpool is a religion. And again, Bill Shankly, the legend who descended from Scotland into this post-industrial city at its lowest moment, when the club was in the second tier, and knew how to say all the right things, knew how to lift the city, knew how to lift the fan base. Gave football of that period so many of its its axioms. That's where the religion starts. He essentially lifted up the tablets, wrote the tablets. He's like the Joseph Smith of Liverpool. That religion goes through Bob Paisley all the way through Klopp and Slot. All of them giving quote upon quote, which almost have a quasi-religion. Every post-match word becomes part like the Scouse Talmud. So when Liverpool wins now, what's interesting, you told me this, Raw, from being at the Spurs game, that the amount of old chants from the 80s and 90s that came out, the fans actively fusing this season to the texts of the great ones of the past. These heroes, their forefathers who begat them. Liverpool's history, the modern period, Shankly is Genesis, Paisley is Exodus. If you want to be a nutso, I'm pushing this far too far, FSG may have just written Leviticus and Numbers, but it is a very It is different. Liverpool fandom is different. You could make the case it's almost a fundamentalist kind of theology, which is why Trent has to be blotted out. He does. He have to be expunged. You either believe or you don't believe. And that modern fairy tale that he's lived, it was beautiful. A local boy had dreamed of leading the club. He grew up, supporting to a league title and then doing it. Not once, but twice. That's not meant to end that story with. And then he turned his back on the club. Stevie Gerrard did not do that. He's not a legend in this reality. He's a prophet. He's more than. But he didn't deliver league glory. Nor did Jamie Carragher. Trent has twice. For me, I look at Trent, I'm like, how do you keep developing as a human being? Never mind a footballer. Like, you need new challenges. But what happens now? Do you just keep retelling his story? Does he get downgraded from a great to just a good? Do you start to, his story feels smaller and smaller with every telling? The murals, painted over or left to fade with time. The normal lad from Liverpool. Will he just one day just be Trent, a name that'll conjure memories and a bit of a wound? I hope that won't be the case. I hope it's a wound that will heal. But how do you understand that? All this talk of legacy, Raw.
Well, to be honest, one of the things that I thought or have been thinking over the last few months, as it's become increasingly obvious that he's going, is that he's going at quite a good time to come back. Go and play for Real Madrid for 4 years, and at the age of 30, leave them on a free transfer too, and come back to Liverpool. That would have been. Absolutely, to me, that would have been fine, but I'm conscious that I can't tell other fans how to think. I can't tell other fans kind of what their beliefs about their religion should be. I think, as I say, my main reaction to this now is it's really sad, because Trent Alexander-Arnold is a lovely guy. He's a really nice guy. He has been an incredible player for Liverpool.
And he's grown so much as a human. Yeah. The first interviews we both did with him around the age of 17, he couldn't look at the camera, he could barely
so
speak.
Shy.
Yes. Yeah.
And really, I remember I spoke to him, I went to see him doing work for a charity called An Hour for Others, who get people to donate their time for an hour a week, providing a skill. It could be, a car mechanic or a plumber or whatever, donating their skill to help people in need. And Trent's mum, who's a really remarkable woman, she's involved with it. And Trent was doing it, it wasn't through the club. He wasn't doing it because he had to do it. He was doing it because he'd always done it. And
we can't have this, Raw. We can't have him be a nice guy. We've got to stop. That's why.
This is who you're booing. This is who you are booing.
Stamp this out. We can't allow goodness.
He had this thing with one of his close mates at the academy where they said that if one of them made it, they would try and give back immediately. And this was when he was 18, I think, when I spoke to him. He was working at one point. He had a sort of foundation type thing set up to help kids who'd been released by academies who hadn't made it. He was always really conscious of the fact that he was really lucky. He is a good guy. I think in the recent years, he's been out with, then he was pictured with Iris Law, Jude Law's daughter, who's a supermodel of some sort. Not really that up with the supermodel world, Rog. I'm in my mid-40s.
Unless they're dating Bill Belichick, I've no idea.
Unless they're into, aging former Patriots coaches. Then they're fair game.
No, I only know her from her work in Miss Main and in the talent in the beauty pageant. So,
but there is now a slight element of superstar accoutrement to Trent, and I think there is a perception maybe that he has done a little bit more big time, but I don't think that's true. I think he is still Trent Alexander-Arnold. He has lived this incredible life. I can understand that he wants to go to Madrid and that he wants to see a new horizon. He probably wants to stop having to be told that he's crap at defending all the time. He wants to go and play with Jude Bellingham and wants to be in the semi-finals of the Champions League pretty much every year. He just wants to do something new. I get that. I get that it hurts. I think it's a shame that because of toxic masculinity, we can't all just say that we are sad and we find the whole thing sad. I get that you're right. He kind of has to be expunged from the religion because he's... it's then, I suppose, maybe... the fact that Trent Alexander-Arnold, the boy who lived the dream, is prepared to turn his back on the dream, poses an awkward question to all of us about how optional the dream is. I think that is really kind of pertinent. That it is a bit like, well, hang on, if you're doing this thing that is meant to be what we're all fantasizing about, what does that mean about the fantasy? Is it maybe not quite what we want it to be? There's two other aspects that I find fascinating. One is just how endlessly interesting Trent Alexander-Arnold is. I can't think, obviously take Messi and Ronaldo out of it, I can't think of a player who has been discussed more than Trent Alexander-Arnold in my lifetime. And the other thing, and this is maybe pertinent for the next 2 weeks, you've seen a little bit online today, certainly. Did Arne Slot maybe make a little bit of a misstep by bringing him on? Would it not have been better if Trent Alexander-Arnold's last memory in front of the Kop had been celebrating the title win? Did he really need to be exposed to that?
That one is, there's so much in what you said. The other player that comes to mind for me in terms of discussed ad nauseum is Harry Kane. Honestly, for similar reasons. Deeply complicated, one of our own. Also an Englishman who was really good at football, which is something we're quite uncomfortable with. But I also love, living the dream is not ultimately. That's why I love embracing the nightmare. Rather, live the nightmare. Young listeners, do not dare live the dream. Just embrace the bloody nightmare, would you? And then, Raw, final point on him. I love your idea that he's just sick. Because you wanted me to ask this when I last spoke to him. You wanted me to ask, what do you, are you sick of people telling you can't defend? Maybe at the end of the day, it's as simple as, man just wants to be told he can't defend in a different language. He wants to be told he can't defend in Spanish. Let a man live out all of his experiences. To Arsenal, God, the face on Arteta in that first half. In Liverpool, we call it bare-ass slap face. Just the shock, the astonishment, the embarrassment. What a strange agony. Grips all of the Hathaway mob at the moment. A fifth straight season without a major trophy. Trust the process, but what if that process just keeps delivering second place finishes? That agony in Paris. I want to go on record. People laugh at this too. I do admire Mikel Arteta so much. The wonder, the intensity, the weirdness. I love it all. The obsession, the details, the pickpockets, win the beautiful dog, the willingness above all to show emotion. Yeah, there's a slightly, almost late period Wengerian, I think you can call it, habit of explaining defeats away in slightly delusional ways, which I think any of us who are in heightened states of emotion, we know from our own life, you can do it. I look at him and that internet phrase, which I'm not sure I'm particularly comfortable with, and I'm not sure I even fully understand it. It's like, bro was willing to risk it all. That's who he is. He aspires publicly. He's admitted he wants to win. That is his crime, and he's failed multiple times. We talked about up top, we love failures more than anything. We must now all point and laugh. We're compelled to scream bottle job FC. To me, there's few sounds more grating than haters being right yet again. But Raw, it is hard to win. We've talked about the hardest steps in life are the first one and the last one. I think anyone that's tried to do something will know that. That is it. He's a brooding man. He came on our show after the first second place and said that he looked in the mirror looked at himself hard in the mirror and asked himself after that first second place, am I the man? Do I have what it takes to lift this squad? God knows what he'll say back to him this season. The squad's in its prime, 26.9 I think is the average age. Like, it's ready to go next season. Zubimendi, as the rumours about his verbal agreement, he's coming. Who's going to be the clinical striker? The Saliba replacement? Will there be a Martinelli upgrade? But at what point will the mirror scream back that Arsenal need a refreshed, re-energised new leader?
Well, the thing about Arteta that I find surprising, I'm, like you, quite well disposed towards Mikel Arteta. I first met him more years ago than I'd care to admit. I think, did Everton make the cup final in 2009? Is that right?
2009, yes.
Yeah. So it would have been in the build-up to that cup final. And I met him, and he was then an incredibly engaging, compelling, intelligent, emotive, kind of quite inspiring figure. He's again a lovely man, Mikel Arteta, and yet there is something about him that does appear to grate on people. I don't quite know what it is. I think a lot of the things that he tries have an undisputable and slightly unfortunate LinkedIn energy, which is not,
LinkedIn energy.
Not great. It does feel a bit like he's going to use something to tell you what it tells him about B2B sales. There is that whole vibe with Mikel Arteta, which is unfortunate.
Congratulations, so happy for you. What a great leader.
Yeah, he's at a risky moment. I wrote about this at the weekend and got a lot of pushback from Arsenal fans, which is legitimate. And, it's all in the the cut and thrust of public debate.
What would Riyad Mahrez say about that?
Part of the game, isn't it?
It's part of the game, isn't it?
It's part of the game. It is very much part of the game, Roger, and we welcome it. But no, I think the progress Arsenal have made under Arteta is undeniable. It is equally undeniable that there are 2 or 3 quite glaring holes in that squad. He has, an interesting challenge ahead in that the most obvious upgrade is the number 9. He needs a striker. He needs someone who can score lots of goals. I did wonder at Anfield on Sunday whether that person might be Gabriel Martinelli, but that's maybe something we can put to one side. The problem for Arteta is that he made a big point early in his reign of shipping the egos out. He didn't want Mesut Ozil there. He didn't want Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. He didn't want players who could challenge his authority. The strikers who are likely to be available, or the majority of them, are ego-driven players. Great number 9s always are, to be perfectly honest. Victor Osimhen, I think, is probably not a particularly easy character to manage. I think Victor Osimhen probably feels that quite a lot of things should be arranged in his favour, and I'm not saying that in any way as a criticism. That is what Osimhen, who's got this incredible goal-scoring record, feels he needs to get the best out of his ability. That's fine. Arteta has to work out how much control he's comfortable ceding to a number 9. That's the big issue. If he can't get it right, I think he does have a bit of a problem, because there has been an energy around Arsenal this year, a slightly weird, slightly restless, and at times a little bit wild energy. There has been just a touch of desperation, that sense that their time is now, that it's all been built into this. Manchester City have collapsed, it's our moment. Oh no, it's not our moment, Liverpool are 15 points clear. That energy is fine now, the club stays with him, the fans stay with him. If next season it starts to look a little bit like the title might be out of reach again, if Liverpool continue, or if City rebuild, or if, I'm going to say Manchester United, but let's not be ridiculous, if Newcastle push on, if Newcastle, who've been this great form team, this great force the second half of the season, if there is a point at which Arsenal look at the table next season and think, we have lost ground yet again, this might be another year without a major trophy, at that point I think the fans, not all of them, but some of them, might just start to curdle on Arteta, because at some point a journey has to have a destination.
When you lose Hathaway, is that the tipping point?
Has Anne Hathaway got a boo in her?
God bless. I don't know. Let's find out. Hathaway is essentially the new troops. When you've lost Hathaway, that's the moment. I look at Mikel as I did Pep Guardiola in his quest for the Champions League trophy, like Captain Ahab. In Moby Dick, that last quote of his towards the eye roll. I mean, this is what we talked about for Pep as he reached for the Champions Europe, that all-destroying but unconquering wail. To the last, I grapple with thee, from hell's heart I stab at thee, for hate's sake I spit my last breath at thee. Godspeed to all of you Arsenal fans. Okay, north of the wall to Newcastle 2, Chelsea 0. Epic rumble of the weekend. In rare Newcastle sunlight, 4th versus 5th. 3 games to go. These two teams tight. Level on points and goal difference. Newcastle ahead only by goals scored. Toon seeking an 8th victory in 10 league games. Chelsea revived at the last, starting the same players. This was incredible, for the 3rd game on the run for the first time in 6.5 years. If that is ever a symbol of a team trying to create consistency out of chaos. A late flourish over the last month, a nod to pretend that they are not dysfunctional. This game began really as a clash of heavy armour from the kickoff. Chelsea just rolled down, won a corner. Newcastle right up the other end, almost like berserkers on the counter. Tonali first won the ball back on the edge of the Chelsea box, fed it to Murphy, chucked it like a grenade with a pin out into the corridor of uncertainty. 12th assist of the season for him, and it was Tonali who met it at the far post quite brilliantly, improvising. I use that word loosely because he admitted it was a mistake afterwards. A bounce pass finish to completely bamboozle the goalkeeper, cannon it over him. Raw, the black and white delirium that just broke out after that. The noise, the spectacle. Are there more large tattooed stomachs per acre in St James's Park than anywhere else on earth?
In the sunshine, almost certainly. I'm not sure there is any kind of race of people on the planet who are more eager for toplessness as soon as the temperature gets above.
My mother and Newcastle fans. My mother, not the toplessness, but like on the bikini in the garden in Liverpool when it's like icy still outside, but the sun is creeping out. She's like out there. Newcastle fans, I respect your game. Yeah, really.
Yeah, there is sunshine. Occasionally, let's take our tops off.
From that point on, first half, all downhill for Chelsea. Lots of the ball, but because really Newcastle wanted them to have it so they could counter in moments, pressure them into panic, which was pretty easy when there were players like Nico Jackson playing for Chelsea, because Nico Jackson going to Nico Jackson, and for pretty well no reason other than personal frustration. 36-minute routine high ball, Nico under with Botman, he looked at sneakily to get a measure of the man, delivered a straight arm shiv to the face, VAR, red card. Nico suspended for the last 2 games of his season. I think we've all talked about that enough. Immature, reckless decision making. That's what happens with the green shoots of youth. Reckless decision making that could cost his teammates massively, not just in terms of end output, but financially for that club in the short and medium term. I've got to credit Chelsea with 10 men. I think they almost doubly outpassed essentially into their shell Newcastle in that second half. It did get nervy. Nick Pope made a couple of fine saves. Reece James got the best chance all wrong in the dying second, only for the quite beloved Bruno Guimaraes to score from long range via a deflection. Raw, Newcastle, what a turnaround. I'm old enough to remember last October, this reverse fixture. I think they lost it 2-1. Couldn't summon a win. Eddie Howe looked like he was on the rocks. This guy, the relationship is frayed. There's a deep frustration. Suddenly worked out how to use Tonali in the deeper role. 15 wins in the last 21 games have ensued. They've rolled to 20 victories in a league season for the first time since the great Bobby Robson era of 2002-03. Carabao Cup win to boot, 3rd place. Arsenal, Everton to come. Raw, in a season of managerial transformations. We've lauded Slot, of Nuno, Vitor Pereira, David Moyes even, Iraola. The plaudits Eddie Howe deserves seem to have been a little lost in the mail.
Yeah, I guess it's partly because he's not a fresh face. It's not new that Newcastle are good. Obviously 2 years ago they qualified for the Champions League. They had the dip last season, which I think is a challenge they'll face again next year when they have to manage the Premier League and the Champions League at the same time, especially now that the Champions League has been expanded. So to an extent, it's that there are more compelling, newer stories to tell. I guess Iraola has felt more like a fresh face on the scene this season than Eddie Howe. But over the last, to be honest, since the turn of the year, really, it's really hard to argue with what Eddie Howe has done. For Newcastle potentially to be finishing second, because if they beat Arsenal, then with all due respect to Everton, you would expect Newcastle to win the final game of the season. Newcastle might finish second in the Premier League this season, which is absolutely extraordinary. Their best lead finished for 30 years, or give or take. Given that they are still working with a squad that to an extent was built in that first flush of Saudi money and Howe's revolution, it's a remarkable feat of coaching, a remarkable feat of squad building. They will want to kick on, they will want to reinforce, they will want to build from that position of strength. But they looked for the first time, and as I say, because of the running and eating thing that they're going to have to do next season, it's maybe a little bit of a stretch, but they're title contenders next season, as things stand. There's no reason that you would say Newcastle could not win the league next year.
For Chelsea, they'll take heart from the fight in the second half, but then have to face Manchester United at home, then a final day of the season away game at Nottingham Forest, which would be a little bit like an NBA-style potential Champions League playing game. Missing out on Champions League, all that cash in the era of PSR, financial fair play. One analyst said the Europa League qualification would restrict summer spending to about $100 million. Hence, there'll be more creative accounting. This is what Nico Jackson's fault. Yeah, there'll be more selling of hotels you already own back to yourself because of that. There'll be more selling the women's club back to yourself. European Conference League final incoming now. Maresca will face Manuel Pellegrini and the mighty, glorious Real Betis, a man whom he lovingly called his football dad. I love that phrase, football dad. Who's your football dad, Ro?
Rafa Benitez. He was the first Liverpool manager I really got to know. I worked with him, and he was a guiding light for me in the early days of my career. Rafa Benitez, I think, and then in that
really?
sense, I suppose, he just.
Did he teach you about leads, heads, decks? Did he teach you about the
taught me how to shave,
the tactics of journalism? Did
that's
he
why
really?
That's why I've got a goatee.
Terrible at shaving. So bad at it.
I'm also. Do you know I was with my nephew the other day and his dad and my brother-in-law, and he'd been teaching him to shave, and I remembered my dad never taught me how to shave. Never showed me.
Yeah, I'm so bad at shaving. It's probably one of the things I am like. There's many things I'm terrible at. That is the worst thing. Rafa Benitez, it's very interesting. I've not thought about this. When he was at Newcastle, obviously, boo Rafa Benitez for his Everton period. But a lot of you sent me Newcastle scarves with Rafa Benitez on because he looks almost identical to me, or I look like him. I look like Rafa Benitez's stuntman. God bless. Mine is Carlo Ancelotti. He's my football dad, only because he went to the shops for a pint of milk and never came back. I love that idea. Who is your football dad? Tell us at meninblazers@gmail.com. We've all got a football dad and a football mum, and I want to hear about all of them. Bournemouth 0. Villa 1. Stealth big game of the weekend. 8th welcoming 7th. European places within touching distance. Really tired grapple of a game. Truly tense though. Bournemouth in their red and black stripes. Villa playing all white. If you squinted, you can make believe AC Milan were playing Real Madrid in a really, really tiny stadium. Villa without Tillmans for the rest of the season. Motivated by Manchester City's slip. Bournemouth had so much of the first half initiative, but could not take advantage of it. Just before the half-time whistle, Semenyo caught in possession. Rodgers drilled in a quick cross, and it was Ollie Watkins who kissed the ball with the featheriest, if that's a word, diversion, caressed it into the corner. 16th of the season, 75th for the club for him, most ever in the Premier League for Villa. His teammates all pointing at him in celebration like he is him. A massive goal in a strange season for Ollie in which he scored a ton but not felt really the true love. It's incredible to me, Raw. Football is about centimetres. That kiss of the ball by Ollie Watkins, when you look at it, that finish, that little tickle, that tiny, tender tickle, that was the difference in this game between everything.
Yeah, and it might yet prove to be, as we said with Chelsea, like a hugely significant moment. The greatest significance in terms of impact, I don't know how you'd measure that, like actual physical, tangible touch, is so light, and yet the impact would be so considerable for Aston Villa if they make it into the Champions League. Because the thing that unites Newcastle and Chelsea and Villa and all of the other teams in that chase is not just how much money you get for being in the Champions League, how much status you get for being in the Champions League, which means that you can spend your money on better players. It's the fact that there will be 6 Premier League teams in the Champions League next season. You really don't want to be one of the 2 who miss out.
God, that is an agony. Talking about missing out. I feel for Bournemouth. We've got a beautiful film coming about their season, their dreams, their infrastructure, their journey. Villa, though, are now 6 behind Chelsea on goal difference. They finish off the season with essentially a tour of the Europa League dread finalists, taking on Tottenham and then Manchester United in their final games. Talking of Tottenham, Spurs 0, Crystal Palace 2. Roll on Europa League final in Bilbao, 21st of May. Big Ange, almost like now at this point, just a small town girl living in a lonely world. Don't stop believing, Ange! In a wake in which Harry Kane lifted the first trophy of his career in buying colours at the age of 31. Antonio Conte has Napoli top in Italy. He's won trophies with every single club he's managed in the last decade, apart from Tottenham. Spurs handed Palace their first win at Tottenham in 27 years. Palace did the double, Eze the executioner, either side of half-time. Palace now charged into that FA Cup final, date of destiny. Their effort to win a first domestic trophy, this is incredible to me, major domestic trophy, since the club was founded back in 1861. I do believe everyone, bar Manchester City fans and probably Brighton fans, will be cheering for them. We actually had the manager, Oliver Glasner, on the show for an interview which will drop on Friday. I adore that man. He had a brain hemorrhage, age 37, had to teach himself to walk and talk again. He's an incredible lot of humanity there. Let's talk Big Ange though, Raw. All the professionalism we saw in Bodo Glimt on Thursday night in clinching that final just evaporated amongst all the changes he made here. Going back to that default factory setting of wide open defending, 20 league defeats on the season, most Spurs have ever suffered in a Premier League campaign. And you spent a lot of time railing against the media's narrative around the club. An incredible quote. He said, "I've said before, the narrative around the club is not positive at all. It's existed for a very long time. You need to break through that. I'm trying to create a culture within the group where at least they can't guide our destiny, because that's almost self-fulfilling. If you expect something to go wrong, it will." So the prospect of a Europa League win, Raw. It's not just the $133 million which will come with qualification for the Champions League. I don't know who needs it more, Big Ange or Amorim. It could change that Spurs a loser narrative in a heartbeat. But it could also just be Emperor's new clothes in terms of Big Ange's ability to organise a backline in the Premier League. Two things can be right.
Yeah, two things can be true at once, absolutely. And it is a really confusing situation for Spurs, because I think if they had been knocked out by Eintracht Frankfurt in the quarterfinals, which a lot of people probably expected them to be, then Postecoglou would be sacked in the summer. And I don't take any great pleasure in saying that. I don't actually buy a lot of Ange Postecoglou's kind of rhetoric about there being this thing where Spurs drives people crazy. I quite like Spurs, to be honest. I don't have a strong opinion on them either way, but generally it's positive. I like him. I like the football he plays. I think it's, we're maybe lapsed Postecoglouites, Rog, aren't we? That's maybe what we are.
Theologically
speaking, we're lapsed Postecoglouites.
Would we be exiled at this point? Would we
no,
be
not
shunned?
Quite, but I think we're maybe
shunned?
not going to the church.
Well, are we at the nailing tenants on the church door?
No, do you know what it
stage?
is?
We're not.
We're cultural Postecoglouites rather than like devout.
That's fair.
But the secular
still keep the major holidays.
Yeah, exactly. You'll take the time off work. Don't get me wrong, but you're not actually going to church and listening to him. But it puts them in a really awkward position, because I have a friend who's a Spurs fan, and he'd given up on Ange by about February, and his view was very much want him gone, not interested anymore, doesn't work. There was a souring among the fans of the way Postecoglou was presenting himself, which I think we talked about at the time. And then I said, well, what happens if he wins the Europa League? And he laughed and said, we're not going to win the Europa League. And then I said, no, but go on, what happens if you win the Europa League? And he said, well, if he wins the Europa League, he can stay for 10 years. I don't care. They've won a trophy. And winning a major trophy is that important to Tottenham that it almost makes what comes afterwards completely irrelevant. But to win that trophy, Postecoglou's going to have to... He's in this really awkward position, because in the league, they've been awful. Naive, childlike, puerile, ridiculous, funny... Awful.
17th,
really bad.
Raw.
They're 17th in the Premier League. It's nuts. And we're going to come on to United.
The relegation zone is just there.
Well, I think Martin Samuel wrote in the Times today that if Ruud van Nistelrooy hadn't completely cocked up reviving Leicester, Spurs could well be getting relegated. They would be in a
ifs, they're not.
Legitimate relegation battle.
Yeah.
They have been awful in the Premier League. But in Europe, they've been pretty smart. The performance they produced, Bodo wasn't the best example of it, but again, it was a mature and sensible performance in the Arctic Circle against everyone's favourite team. But away in Frankfurt, Spurs were incredibly clever, really mature, really disciplined, really well organised.
Ultimately, it's United and Spurs. Their biggest mistake is not to play every game on a Thursday.
Not to play on a Thursday, not to play in Europe. So the problem for both of them, Rog, is that what is it? What is Bilbao? Is it a European game, or is it a game against another Premier League team? Because that's the problem.
God, Spurs fans, cling on to this. You got 3 wins against United in 24-25. You got an undefeated record against them under Ange in his 2 seasons. I've got to say, I do wish Big Ange so bloody well. It's the best of times, it's the worst of times at Tottenham. The campaign in the league has been sadder than the prospect of Sesame Street without Elmo. If he can make good on this, I don't usually win things. I always win things in my second year, mate. Big Ange redemption would be one of the most remarkable feats I have ever witnessed. In other games, talking about Manchester United, United 0, West Ham 2, in a battle to see who is the most or least mediocre United. West Ham, who hadn't won since February, eyes for United firmly on the Europa League final, dance of death. Amorim rang in 6 changes. Football was as sloppy as one would expect. A United reject, Aaron Wan-Bissaka starting and being involved in both goals as United suffered their 9th home Premier League defeat of the season, joint most ever in a single league campaign. Massive win for Graham Potter, that nice guy floundering dangerously since his return to management with the Hammers. They do the double over United for the first time in 2 decades. Amorim continuing his quite fascinating strategy of radical honesty, asking possibly the most damning questions about his own club. This is what Amorim does. He's like, let me take away the most damning questions that can be asked of me by journalists by saying them myself. He admitted his team mentally do not fear losing anymore, which is not good. Who's responsible for that? I don't know. Wearing a hot dog suit. And then post-game, it doesn't matter if we win or lose the Europa League final. The problems are much bigger than that. He's just like a meme. He's the dog having the coffee, but saying the opposite of this is fine. Raw, we are approaching 20 years of the Glazers, Tampa Bay Buccaneers owners, which has seen United kind of slide with debt to become the Grey Gardens, shadow of themselves in the league. Thursday night is the joy. Here's what I don't understand. If Manchester United end up 17 losses, 16th place, but win the Europa League and end up in Europe. By the way, if Tottenham do the same, 20 losses, 17th place. By the way, for United, that would be silverware 3 straight years. You can make the case even in their biggest down, they're still bloody winning things. I guess either team, if they have the surreal happiness amidst the Johnny Cash hurt doom that is prevailing vibe, can they claim to be happier than Arsenal fans?
I think in the moment, yes, because it's nice winning trophies. That it's a major, especially the circumstances of that Europa League final will be so tense and so pressurised and so kind of concentrated that you can make the case that in the moment they would be able to make that slightly ridiculous case that they've ended up having, a better season than Arsenal because they've got in the Champions League and they've won a trophy, which Arsenal will only have done one of. But realistically, long term in the round, no. These are both clubs that need major surgery. Spurs, you can maybe make the case that if you put a manager who's prepared to play a more flexible style into that club, maybe the squad is there without too many major additions to be back up towards the right end of the table. Manchester United are in a mess. I don't see who they sell their players to. Their players are all on huge amounts of money and will have to take wage cuts to move. I don't see who they attract, particularly without Champions League football, given that money is apparently tight. They need 6, 7, 8 players for that first team, plus a squad. It's a far bigger job than I think their fans, than the media, than pundits are realising. And part of me wonders whether Ruben Amorim doesn't massively fancy it.
When you listen to him post-match, no one is more aggressively critical of Manchester United than one Ruben Amorim. At least use your pen name or a burner account like a traditional sports person. By the way, I did look it up. There's no version of grams or beats per minute to measure disappointment, Rod. There's an economic framing. I think it's called something like the misery index, which is something like unemployment rate times inflation rate or whatever it is. I don't quite understand it. But I think it essentially explains Everton to me. Remember Spurs fans, remember United fans, it could always be worse. You could support Everton. Nottingham Forest 2, Leicester City 2, East Midlands derby. God bless Leicester City, channeling the spirit of Southampton, fighting when relegated. Only spoilers in a local derby vibe to play for. Game was 1-1 into the 56th minute. Stunning pure Nottingham Forest football broke out. They won the ball back quickly, went front to back. A goal made to look simple, but one born over hours of drilling, training, Nuno style on that training ground. Morgan Gibbs-White, who could be one of his last games ticking away in a Forest shirt, flighting a diabolically stunning ball onto the head of Chris Wood, who I think hadn't scored since April 22nd. Thundered home his 20th of the season, age 33, having an aura campaign. Most goal by a Forest player in 3 decades. That moment felt so stunning, so seismic. You saw how they celebrated it, but God bless Leicester City. Living John Oliver's mantra, that spite is the rocket fuel of human motivation. Buena Notte, first trash talk by Ola Aina. And he responded just by strolling up the gut. And I think it's called hand-jiving. It used to be in the 1960s what he did before stabbing the ball home. Forest didn't respond, just an agony. Onto the field came Forest, quite singular owner, Evangelos Marinakis, screaming in poor manager Nuno's face. It was tough. Yes, they let the chance of controlling Champions League destiny slip away, but at the same time, they had guaranteed they'll play in Europe for the first time since 1996, as they cannot finish below 7th place. Raw, there's a time and a place, I think we'd agree, for the owner to talk to his manager. Am I safe in saying that Marinakis' idea of the time and place is a bit different to yours?
I was going to say, there's a time and a place, but it's that time is when Evangelos Marinakis thinks is appropriate, and the place is wherever he wants. If you live by the Evangelos Marinakis, you die by the Evangelos Marinakis. He has done lots of good by putting lots of money into Nottingham Forest, building that team, getting them into a position where they can be in Europe. There is also this side to him. That is who he is. He will not change. You can't have the first without the second.
I mean, it's awful to watch that because Nuno is such a Zen wonder and he's now having to defend Marinakis. But also, a little bit of me is he's almost like a character from WWE in the 1980s, just flung into the Premier League through a hole in time, and that little part of me gets quite a kick out of him. Yasu, Southampton 0, Manchester City 0. We were told City were back. They've just had their joint longest run this season, I think 4 straight wins, controlled their path back to the Champions League. They've got the FA Cup final next weekend to win a tchotchke. This then, an enormous setback for Pep Guardiola. Despite starting Erling Haaland for the first time in 6 games, they couldn't break down a resolute Southampton backline. It was a very odd tactical setup by Pep, who went wingless for a long time. Doku's been so good, such a driver of this turn in form. He didn't come on until late. Marmouche, the late show, he splattered the crossbar, and City just could not score against a team that I think had kept like 2 clean sheets in their last 47 Premier League games, suddenly defending with a vigour after leaving themselves wide open all season. I did love Ruben Dias saying that, why didn't they leave themselves wide open? That's not okay. This team had lost 28 of 35. They allowed 26 shots, but City could not break them down. A sweet point. You will rarely hear a louder cheer at a stadium of an already relegated team as they won that sweet point that meant that they will not equal Derby's 20-year-old record of being the worst team ever in Premier League history. That has gone raw. I did wonder, like, if they played like this all season, they could have qualified for Europe, couldn't they, Raw?
They could certainly have finished above Manchester United, yeah. I think partly it's that the pressure's off, that they are playing now for respect, for self-respect, for their dignity, and they ran into a team in Manchester City who lacked maybe the bit of luck at times, but also kind of the hunger, the energy, the intensity to overcome them. It is nice that Southampton have got that extra point, that they don't have the indignity of finishing level with Derby. That means they can at least go down, if not their heads held high, then at least their heads just their heads still there.
When you're talking about dignity, I'd love to know if they do or do not play Whitney Houston's greatest love of all before they take the field, before they go on. Don't worry, Southampton fans who dream of chasing history. If your team lose their last 2, you'll still have the record of the most losses in a Premier League season. So all's not lost. Wolves 0, Brighton 2. 2 goals for surging again. Brighton, 2 lovely moments. 34-year-old Danny Welbeck hit double figures for Premier League goals for the first time in his almost 17-year career. And then the game was capped off by 20-year-old Brahan Gruda, who scored his first ever goal in the Premier League. 18th appearance, I think it's taken a while. Keeps Brighton pushing along in the race. He just dropped to his knees on the field, started sobbing like a kid that has dreamed and worked so hard and suffered for that moment. It was beautiful. Ipswich 0, Brentford 1. Brentford continue that push for European football in the mini-league Battle of the Bees with a 1-0 win. 4th win in succession. 8th now, potential Conference League football in their hands. Their goal quite delicious. Stunning Kevin Shard, a flick header in the 18th minute. Brentford are an enigma. Began the season as the best home team, ended it as the best away team. I think 22 points in the last 9 games on the road. They could have, baked those 2 runs together. They would be bloody top 4. Think about that. I wrote this in Friday's newsletter. My producer, J-Dubs, lifelong Ipswich fan, from his days as a military brat over there on a US Air Force base. He flew over with his 4-year-old son. I love this, to watch his already relegated team so they could have one more Ipswich home game and make Premier League memories together. Raw, I adore this. I admire that act so bloody much. It's like the ultimate march of folly. A reminder that football is not rational, it is emotional. Life is short. Ultimately, your memories are all you have.
But also it sums up kind of how Ipswich have embraced this season, rather than Southampton and Leicester, where there has been a little bit of hand-wringing and garment-rending, genuine grief at how the season's gone. I think Ipswich went into it knowing that they were glad to be here. It was a chance to make some memories, and if it didn't last for long, then you might as well make the most of it.
Yeah, Jacob told me his son turned around. His son's 4, turned around to him at this final whistle of a pretty dreadful game and said, "Dad, why didn't we get to sing any of our songs the whole game?" And J-Dubs told him, "That's a question, quote, that will require a very long answer." Highlight of the game for them all was the Brentford fans chanting, "Que sera, sera, whatever will be, we're going to Hungary." I love an unexpected half rhyme. God bless Ipswich. By the way, if you told Ipswich fans before the season that their team would come one place below Tottenham, they would have bitten your arm off. Look at it that way. Let's do this. This did really happen. Fulham 1, Everton 3. 0 expectations coming in. We were fielding a right side of exhumed Ashley Young, aged 87, and Michael Keane, aspiring professional defender. Fulham scored The second the commentator talked about how Raul Jimenez hadn't scored in 7 games, first decent cross that came in, got his header on it from close range, 47th minute. Football, though, teaches you know nothing. Even Everton, nothing corner. Mikalenko struck a shot he never should have done. It was a terrible shot as well, but to go all Michael Scott on you, channeling Wayne Gretzky, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, deflection, rolled it in. I think a goal off 0.02 of XG, #free Ukraine. Second half, Everton came alive. It was actually lovely. First, Michael Keane nodded home. Goal, which made me eat all of my words raw. He's a liability as a defender. But probs, I said this at the time, there is no more natural goal scorer in the Everton squad than that man. And then someone tweeted the shooting success rate this season. Are you ready for this? In the Premier League, Raw, the entire Premier League, reverse order, top 3 are Salah, 23.14% of his shots go in. Isak is at 25%. And top of the table at 30%. Michael Keane is a purer goal scorer than Erling Haaland.
Is that because he scored twice from 6 shots? Are they the figures?
Oh, you data freaks. You always find a way to undermine our joy. I talked about joy. Beto, you talked about ego-driven strikers. Can Mikel Arteta handle them? Beto, the most humble man in football. By the way, a first-time shot that when I looked at it in real time, I actually thought it was just him miscontrolling the ball. Bernd Leno just let it go through him. 10th of the season for big bets. I adore that man. Everton, 2 goals in 3 minutes. First time we've scored 3 away from home since 2023. Raw. I loved it. The fans, incredible. Everton fans travelling to a meaningless game en masse up in London is amazing too. We got that emotional Goodison farewell to come next weekend. My worry at the final whistle was, did we use up a third of our goals from the first half of next season's allotment?
Come on, there's no reason to be that negative, is there? Everton are sort of surging towards something approaching happiness at this stage. They've got Southampton next week. They're going to end up... Newcastle on the last day is a little bit more challenging, but this is a really positive end to the season. It's a chance to kind of go into next year with a little bit of momentum. The Friedkins have told David Moyes there's money available. It's all there, Rog.
Let your Friedkin flag fly, baby. Let's close this one though with one of the gorgeous letters that keep charging into our mailbag en masse through the end of this season. Send us all of your letters, particularly about your football daddies or your football mothers, twomeninblazers@gmail.com. They give us such bloody joy. Letter of the week this episode comes from the great Bethany Pugh. She wrote it as a mother on Mother's Day. Thank you to all the mothers and to Christian Pulisic's mother in particular. Raw, do the honours.
Hi, Rog and Rory. Writing on this Mother's Day, I have no idea when Mother's Day is. It's not Mother's Day. Mother's Day's in March.
Oh, Raw, baby, it was yesterday. In America, the rest of the world is just wrong. But keep going.
Fine. Writing on this Mother's Day as I celebrate with a Ted Lasso marathon and a Liverpool versus Arsenal while my husband takes my daughters out for the day, which is the perfect gift. While I've revelled in Liverpool this season and all the collective effervescence they've provided, such an amazing interview with Brené Brown, Rog. I knew I loved Brené Brown for a reason. I'm saddened and angered by the treatment of Trent Alexander-Arnold, and as a mother, I feel not only for him but for his dear parents who have helped guide his 20-year journey. My oldest daughter just competed in her first championship Saturday. Could she be Mallory Pugh's mother? Is that possible?
I thought that when I read it through. That would be amazing. But I'm not sure if her team were in the YMCA league. But keep going.
Right, okay. You never know.
Yeah, it'd be amazing if it was.
And her team took the best team in our YMCA league to the brink, but lost. Her sweet face breaking out in tears broke my heart. And I can only imagine how the Alexander-Arnolds must have felt during the match on Sunday, seeing and hearing fans who have sung their son's name in triumph now boo him. My question to you and Rory are, what advice do you have to parents navigating these tough moments with their kids? What words would you give to the Alexander-Arnolds as they navigate this with their son? Sending you both love and courage. Have thoroughly enjoyed this season's journey with you both as guides. P.S., and I agree with this, please make a guide of Rory's food recommendations as a gift for all of us.
Is Bethany Pugh your pen name, Ro? I don't know.
It's one of many. You've got to have a burner account, Rog.
Yeah, it's Ruben Amorim is really who it is at the end of the day. Right, I love this so much. I would probably not give advice to the Alexander-Arnolds. In that interview with Virgil van Dijk that comes out on Wednesday, I actually asked him, I was like, Virgil, what do you say to people who critique Liverpool's season as one in which the other teams just didn't show up? And he just laughed and said I don't even really think about those people. So, professional footballers at some point, and I'm sure the family also learn to tune it out. But How would you answer this? Because it's a beautiful question.
I'm the same. I can't imagine how difficult it must be for Trent Alexander-Arnold's mum in particular, who's as I said earlier, is a really lovely, amazing, inspiring woman, and is a Liverpool fan, I think, and has, the club plays a special role in her life and has a special place in her heart. It must be absolutely devastating to hear your son or your daughter sort of treated like that by people who they thought kind of they represented, who they are, they are the same people. That those are Trent Alexander-Arnold's people. They're Trent Alexander-Arnold's mum's people. It must be devastating. I don't know what you would say, but I think there is in professional sports, there is a hardness, that there is an acceptance that these things happen and also that these things pass. So I think in time the wounds will heal on both sides, but for now I think it must be livid and excruciating and really difficult to live through, and there's no way of escaping that.
I'll answer the second question, Bethany, which is, if you've listened to this show in particular, for me the joy of football is the subtext. Football is this electric display of athleticism, but the thing that keeps drawing me back is the game as really the ultimate, for me, text of humanity. It is like a religious text. All of humanity is captured there, particularly in the Premier League or a World Cup, men's or women's. Just the beauty. I mean, the beauty of Lamine Yamal's rise as a young hero's journey is, for me, is epic as like anything in Virgil's Aeneid. The darkness of the 115 charges is like something from a Norse myth. The magic of watching Arne Slot's leadership is like seeing a moral lesson from an Aesop's fable. These stories are, as your question hints, filled with a sense of wonder, the best ones, but they also contain human darkness. Week on week we see it, week on week we discuss it. For the joy of Newcastle fans, there's the moral lesson of Marinakis, and that to me, I actually embrace it, just like your daughter learning to lose. For me, as a dad, all my kids played quite good football, and while I never wanted them to become professional footballers, what I loved was what they learned off it, by playing it, by watching it, and that's the joy of it. Through the game, being part of a team, learning how to lose, leading, big dreams, harsh realities, learning how to be part of something that's bigger than you. How to suffer, how to give more, how to be dropped, how to experience the feeling of scoring an ineffable goal of wonder that you'll remember forever. All of this, both playing it and watching it, I think as a parent, it allows you to have conversations with your kids, hard conversations, in the most joyous and safe and meaningful way for me. That's football's gift. I wouldn't shy away from any of it. I'd actually really embrace it. And may your daughter rise again with a team. Keep us in the loop, right, Raw, about the YMCA League.
I'm keen to know, keen to know when this best team in the YMCA League can be toppled, Rog.
Yeah, Raw and me, just like we're craving some competitive football to break down, babe.
Come on, something that means something.
Yes,
just to feel again, Rog. Just want to feel
alive. Bethany, thank you for your beautiful letter. Send us your postal. We will send you a patch. That is it for today. I'm actually off to New Orleans this week. We got a Virgil van Dijk joint dropping on Wednesday. We got Oliver Glasner on Friday. Enjoy our show with the quite magical Rob McElhenney, which has just dropped. By the way, Raw said about Team Talk Simona's this one. Listen to it. I learned so bloody much from listening to him. Keep writing to us. Keep sending your dogs, your cats with footballing connections to us via meninblazers@gmail.com. You let us give us energy. I want to get back to my own dog, but let me say we are 395 days away from World Cup 2026. Let's savour each one. Raw, huge love to you, you Crown Prince of Harrogate.
I'm going to stop booing now, Rog.
Oh, God, that's all you've done
just
for the
last 80 minutes. Just a gentle round of applause.
Baby.
That's all.
Yes.
Just a gentle kind of little
less
tap clap.
Booing, more clapping around the urinals, right, Ro?
That's it. Let's start applauding at the urinals, Rog.
We need a visual sign that's the opposite of a wanker sign. I do not know what that is. You know what? I think I've just opened a terrible floodgate, actually.
I'm going to spend most of the rest of the day thinking what would happen if you applauded at a urinal.
Oh my God, my mind just exploded with the idea of the mess. This is Rog sending you big love. Let's not take a second of watching football together for granted and courage.